Good afternoon. I'm Peter Bamford, Bam Safety Ham from the west coast of British Columbia, Canada. I'd just like to tell you a little bit about what SafeStart's meant in my life, if you will. I've had a varied career, primarily in the transportation sector of industry, railroading, longshore, and after 9/11, I was director of all the ports on the west coast of Canada to secure our maritime frontier against that new beast called terrorism. But I also worked with Larry a lot throughout the years, the last 15 years actually, and this thing called SafeStart, this process, if you will. And I call it a process because it's not a program. A program has a beginning and an end, and a process, it has a beginning, but it doesn't end. What Larry's developed here in this process called SafeStart is something that's with you for the rest of your lives, and actually it's been with you all your lives, but it's something that keeps you safe every day. And I can really appreciate. I've done a lot of presentations with Larry over the years on a lot of companies throughout North America, and I've heard a lot of stories. But I've always had probably that dark part in my closet, the part where when I was driving trains as a locomotive engineer, I ended up throughout my career killing 3 people. And I always wondered, why? Why did they think they could beat the train at the crossing? What was it that made them in such a hurry that they could actually think that they would win when I've got 14,000 tons going 60 miles an hour? I can't control the train, but they weren't controlling themselves. And if only they had thought about the complacency, or those states, the error pattern of not being in a rush to get across the tracks and end up being in the line of fire, they'd be alive today. Because I know what it's like when I'm in the cab of the locomotive. When we hit that car, we don't see it. It hides underneath the pilot of the engine. But we hear it. We hear the pops of the tires popping out. We hear the glass breaking. Then we hear the screams. Then sometimes we hear the gas tank explode. And shortly afterwards, the car is flung through the air, and we go by it at 40, 45 miles an hour by now because I've got all the brakes in emergency, but I can't do anything about it. Quarter mile, half mile later, we stop. One of us runs back from the engine with a toolkit or a first aid kit, a radio. We've contacted 911. We've got everything we can. But at the end of the day, we take that home with us, and we live with it for the rest of our lives. Those lives that are lost when we had something to do with it that was actually out of our control, but it was all in their control. If only they weren't so complacent. If only they weren't in such a rush to beat that train. Larry has brought forth something in this thing called SafeStart that explains all that to us. It gives us the premonition of what we should be doing before we do it. And it's very easy. If I could quote one great man in the United States of America, a hero of mine, General Norman Schwarzkopf, who we lost 2.5 years ago, the day after Christmas, down in Arlington Cemetery. But I remember during Desert Storm 1 when Norman held a press conference, and he hated press conferences. He hated the press corps. But day 10, Desert Storm 1, there was a decision being made by the administration, and Norman out there in the battlefield didn't quite agree with the decision. He had a better exit ramp. And he held this press conference, and in the press conference he used this quote, "We know what we need to do, we just don't do it." When I read that in his biography, I thought of all the incidents I've been involved with in my career, in my life, in my personal life, even ones that affected me. I knew what I needed to do, I just didn't do it. We all have that common level of intelligence that we all rely on every day to get us through the day. Sometimes we just let it drop, we let it fall by the wayside. Larry's process, called SafeStart, is what really brings it back to us. Thank God he's brought it forward for us because we have saved thousands and thousands of lives. And for that, thank you for paying attention to me, but also thank Larry for coming up with something that does so much good. Cheers, best of luck.